Welcome back to the DRM News Podcast. This time on episode 12, we're diving deep into the world of AI. And there's this new player. It's really kind of shaking things up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how quickly it's gotten everyone's attention.
Like out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it feels that way, yeah.
DeepSeek.
Yeah.
That's the name you got to know.
Yeah.
And their model, DeepSeek-R1, it's making waves, all over the tech world. People are comparing it to, stuff from Google and OpenAI already.
I mean, it's being called a Sputnik moment,
Seriously, Nvidia, the company that makes those powerful chips, the ones they use for, AI development, they lost almost $600 billion
Wow.
in market value after DeepSeek-R1 dropped. So what is it about this DeepSeek-R1? What makes it such a potential game changer?
One of the things that's really surprising is how DeepSeek actually built this thing. They did it with way, way fewer resources than what we've come to think of as, normal, especially compared to the big companies in the U.S.
Right. I've heard they only spent, under $10 million for the whole project. I mean, that's, nothing compared to what OpenAI's thrown at it.
Oh, yeah. It's a fraction. And they say they use less advanced computer chips, too, which really kind of throws a wrench in the idea that you need the absolute, latest and greatest to make cutting-edge AI.
So who is DeepSeek? What's the story behind this thing? It's got everyone buzzing.
Well, they started back in late 2023. The guy behind it is Liang Wenfeng. Pretty interesting guy, actually. He comes from both tech and finance backgrounds.
Oh, so it's not just, another tech bro.
No, not at all. This guy knows his stuff. He's been using AI for, investment strategies for years.
So he's got a real deep understanding of AI and, the whole financial market world.
Yeah. He's been in the game a while. And here's the thing. Back in 2023, he did an interview. And he basically downplayed the cost and how hard it is to get into AI. He was copying existing AI. It's like a recipe. Anyone can do it. He said the real key is the research, testing new ideas. That's what pushes the boundaries.
So he's more interested in, real innovation, not just copying everyone else.
Definitely. Oh, and there's this other thing. This is kind of cool. Liang wrote the preface for the Chinese version of a book about Jim Simons.
Who's that?
The American hedge fund guy. The one who made, billions using math and algorithms.
Okay, now Liang Wenfeng's sounding even more interesting. But let's get back to DeepSeek-R1. How'd they actually pull this off? Make this thing with such limited resources?
Seems like they did it by using a bunch of specialized AI models all working together instead of one massive one. Kind of imagine a team of chefs. Each one's a specialist. One does amazing desserts. Another's the pasta king,
Okay, so instead of one chef trying to do everything, they divide the work. And each model, focuses on its strengths. And that's how they get more efficiency, even with older hardware.
Exactly. They used about 2,000 Nvidia H800 chips for this, which are a step down from the top-of-the-line A100, so they're cheaper, easier to get, especially with all those restrictions on exporting the really good chips to China.
So they took what could have been a limitation and turned it into, a strength. Makes you wonder if those export restrictions are really working the way they're supposed to.
For sure. It definitely raises some questions. And get this, Liang, with his finance background,
Yeah.
he actually stockpiled 10,000 of those top-tier Nvidia A100 GPUs before the ban even happened.
No way. So even though they didn't need those fancy chips for DeepSeek-R1, they've got them, just in case. That's some next-level planning right there. Shows you how well he understands, the whole strategic game around AI development. It's not just about building the tech. It's about navigating the whole global chessboard.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the experts are noticing. This guy, Tanishq Abraham, he used to be a research director at Stability AI. He's calling DeepSeek's success a wake-up call for everyone in the AI community. He's saying this proves there's still so much we can do with what we already have. And that innovation, it can happen anywhere, not just Silicon Valley.
It's like a reminder that being clever, being efficient, can sometimes beat just throwing tons of money and power at a problem. So what does this mean for the whole AI landscape? I mean, globally.
DeepSeek-R1 has definitely changed things. Assumptions are being challenged, boundaries are being pushed, and it kind of feels like the balance of power might be shifting in the world of AI.
This is a story we're going to keep following, for sure. Now, let's dig into what this means for the big players. How has DeepSeek-R1 affected, investor confidence and the whole landscape of AI development in general?
Well, it's definitely made investors in U.S. tech companies a little nervous. We already talked about Nvidia's stock taking a hit, but, companies like Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, and even Microsoft, their share prices dipped after DeepSeek-R1 came out.
So this isn't just about the tech anymore. It's rippling through the financial markets, too.
Absolutely. And maybe even more important, DeepSeek has shown that you don't need to be like a billionaire to create a really good AI. This could change the whole game, open things up to a lot more players, companies, research groups, you
Kind of like
know.
a David and Goliath story, right? It's a smaller, quicker company challenging the giants.
Exactly. And the giants are definitely paying attention. Even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, he admitted DeepSeek-R1 is impressive. He said having a new competitor is invigorating.
So a bit of healthy competition is brewing, which is always good.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the future of AI development? Is this like a turning point?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a big deal. And to really understand it, we got to look at the bigger picture. Rui Ma, she's an expert on the Chinese tech scene. She pointed out that back in 2022, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, it was a big shock in China. It was like a wake-up call. And it seems to have really motivated them to catch up with Silicon Valley.
So DeepSeek's success isn't just a one-off. It's part of a bigger trend of China getting really serious about AI.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting to see how different approaches are playing out. DeepSeek made their model free for anyone to use. OpenAI, on the other hand, they're keeping their most advanced model, ChatGPT-4, behind a paywall.
That's a pretty big difference. One company is all about open access collaboration, and the other is more controlled, commercial. It'll be interesting to see how those strategies play out. What are the pros and cons of each approach?
Well, DeepSeek's open source approach, it could really speed up innovation. By letting anyone use and build on their model, it's almost like crowdsourcing the development, right? That could lead to some pretty quick advancements.
That's exciting, but what about the risks? Making something this powerful free for everyone. Aren't there concerns about people using it for bad stuff? Like unintended consequences?
Oh, absolutely. That's a real concern. Open sourcing something like this, it's not without its risks. It could definitely be used for, bad things, like creating those deepfakes, making them even more realistic and harder to spot, or even spreading misinformation on like a massive scale.
So it's a bit of a trade-off, right?
Right.
You get faster innovation, but also higher risks.
Exactly. And this is where all the talk about AI ethics and regulation, that becomes really important. We got to find ways to keep things moving forward, but also like put some guardrails up, right?
Yeah. How do we encourage the good stuff without, letting the bad stuff run wild?
It's a tough balance. Hard to say exactly how it'll all play out, but I think we'll probably see like a mix of approaches. You'll have governments and regulatory bodies setting some ground rules, but the industry itself, they're going to have to step up too. Take responsibility for making sure their tech is used ethically.
So like a multi-pronged approach. Government regulations, industry self-regulation, and maybe even some public education to get people more aware of like the potential benefits and risks of AI.
You got it. It's going to take everyone working together to figure out this new world where AI is like everywhere and getting more powerful all the time.
This whole DeepSeek-R1 thing, it's got some pretty big ripple effects, huh? We talked about investor confidence, the whole democratization of AI development thing, the ethical stuff. But what about the geopolitical angle?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge part of it. DeepSeek-R1 has definitely shaken up how people see the global AI landscape. It's challenged that assumption that the U.S. is like the undisputed leader, and it shows that China is becoming a real force in AI.
So this goes way beyond just like companies competing. It could actually shift the balance of power globally.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember this isn't some isolated event. China's been investing heavily in AI research and development for a while now. DeepSeek-R1 is just like the latest and maybe the most obvious sign of that.
So we're watching a major shift happening. China's coming up fast in the tech world, specifically with AI. What's that going to mean for innovation? And, who holds the power in the tech world?
It's hard to say for sure, but it probably means we're heading toward a world where power is more spread out, not just concentrated in Silicon Valley. We might see more competition, different approaches to AI development, and maybe even more global collaboration to tackle the challenges and opportunities that come with AI.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. It feels like we're at a turning point, a pivotal moment in the history of AI, and DeepSeek-R1 is right at the center of it.
I totally agree, and I'm really curious to see what happens next.
Us too. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it all.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, you mentioned something earlier about how DeepSeek and OpenAI are doing things differently. DeepSeek's all open source, while OpenAI's got that paywall. Can you talk more about what that could mean, those different strategies?
Sure. DeepSeek's choice to make their model free to use, that's a pretty bold move. It could have some big consequences. On the one hand, it really opens up access to this cutting-edge technology. Researchers, developers, even just people who are interested in AI, they can all play around with it, build on it. That could lead to a huge explosion of new ideas and applications.
It sounds pretty awesome, but I got to ask, are there downsides? Making this powerful stuff free for everyone, doesn't that also increase the chance of it being misused?
Oh, there are definitely risks. Giving everyone access to this technology, yeah, it could mean bad actors get their hands on it too. You could see those deepfakes becoming even harder to detect, or misinformation spreading even faster and wider.
So open source comes with a lot of responsibility. It's like a balancing act, promoting innovation while trying to prevent the bad stuff.
Exactly. It really highlights how important those ethical guidelines and responsible AI development practices are.
And then there's OpenAI, going the opposite direction, keeping ChatGPT-4 behind that paywall. What does that mean for the future of AI?
Well, with their approach, OpenAI has more control over how people use their technology, which, some people see as a way to minimize those risks that come with open access. They can choose who gets to use it, put limits on what people can do with it, and hopefully prevent it from being used for, harmful purposes.
So they're like the gatekeepers, making sure this powerful AI doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. But there are downsides too. When you restrict access, you also limit the potential for collaboration and, new ideas. Fewer people get to try it out, build on it, and that could slow down the progress we make in AI.
Seems like there are good arguments on both sides. Open access can speed things up, but also increase risks. Controlled access can reduce risks, but maybe stifle progress a bit. Tough choices, huh?
You nailed it. It's a real dilemma for the AI community, and there's no easy answer. It'll be interesting to see how it all evolves as AI keeps getting more advanced. We'll probably see a mix of approaches emerge as we all try to navigate this, new frontier.
This is such a fascinating time for AI. It's moving so fast, and it's really hard to predict what will happen next.
I know, right? It's both exciting and a little scary at the same time.
So for the average person out there, what does this all mean? How is AI going to affect our lives in the next few years?
That's the million-dollar question. It's tough to say for sure, but we're already seeing signs of how AI is changing things.
Yeah, like personalized medicine, self-driving cars, things like that. AI has so much potential.
It's an amazing time to be alive, but we also got to be careful.
Make sure this powerful technology is used for good, not for bad.
Exactly. It's up to all of us, researchers, developers, the people making policy, everyone really to work together and make sure AI is used ethically and responsibly.
This has been a great conversation, a really in-depth look at AI and what's happening with DeepSeek-R1.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Our listeners are definitely better informed now. They can follow what's happening in the AI world with, a more critical eye. So thanks again for joining us. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the world of tech and innovation. Until then, stay curious.
Yeah, it really shows how important it is to think carefully about how we develop AI.
So it's not just about the tech itself. It's also about the rules and, the guardrails we put up to make sure it develops in a good way.
Absolutely. It's about responsible development, ethical considerations, how to minimize the risks without stopping innovation from happening.
It's like we're exploring a whole new world with this technology, trying to find that sweet spot between, progress and safety.
That's a great way to put it. We're still trying to figure out how to regulate social media properly, and now we have AI coming along, which could be even more disruptive, and it has the potential to do both good and bad things.
It's a lot to think about, and it feels like the stakes are really high.
They are. We're talking about technology that could completely change industries, economies, maybe even society as we know it.
DeepSeek-R1 has really thrown a wrench into things, hasn't it? The whole AI landscape has been shaken up.
Oh, absolutely. It's challenged our assumptions, made the competition way more intense, and everyone's having to rethink their strategies.
A wake-up call for the entire industry. A reminder that the race for AI dominance is far from over.
And it's a race that doesn't really have an end. The landscape keeps changing, new players are popping up all the time.
So what does all of this mean for the average person? How will these AI advancements affect our lives in the coming years?
That's the question everyone's asking. And it's impossible to predict the future with 100% accuracy, but we can already see how AI is starting to change things around us.
Yeah, like with personalized medicine, self-driving cars, all sorts of things. The potential applications of AI seem almost endless.
It's a really exciting time to be alive, but it's also a time to be cautious and think carefully about the implications.
We have to make sure these powerful technologies are used for good, not for bad.
Couldn't agree more. It's up to all of us, the researchers, developers, policymakers, the public. Everyone needs to work together to make sure AI is used ethically and responsibly.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into the world of AI, and DeepSeek-R1 in particular has really given us a lot to think about.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and your listeners.
Thanks for joining us today. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in to the DRM News Podcast. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the world of technology and innovation. Until then, stay curious.